How's it going, gamer? You got hands here, and today in Dauntless, we're going over a build I made for the Blaze Escalation or any Blaze behemoth in general. It's called the Frost Slayer. It's pretty dope build. I actually have two builds in this video. One that features just some really fun stuff because you're hopping around throwing down ice mines alongside this ice pillar, and the other one is a more DPS based strikers build as well. These are both two strikers builds, and they're really good. As you can see, it focuses on using this ice pillar and spamming the crap out of it, so it's just doing constant damage over time. And not to mention, you are doing frost damage as well, so it's applying the frost debuff to the behemoth, which slows them down and their movements and animations. So that's extremely beneficial, especially in escalation. So turn on your system, grab your strikers, and let's get ready. We're about to get into this video right now. How's it going, gamer? I'm super excited to show you this Frost Slayer build we got going on for the new Blaze Escalation. It's usable in any area because I've soloed heroic behemoths by myself in less than 3 minutes with these two builds. It's definitely great in the Blaze Escalation because there's so much fire or blaze behemoths running around, and it's pretty difficult, so it's really good to have the anti-build for that type of situation. So let's jump into this. I have two builds, remember. One of them is all damage based and one of them is more fun. So these are almost like satire fun builds for the Blaze Escalation. What I like to use is the strikers, because on the Karma Breaker's special move, you do a damage over time, and that's what we're also working with down here with Pangars Shine Lantern Hold, which creates a giant ice field which does damage over time too. So it's kind of like the whole fun thing of seeing numbers and damage numbers just flying everywhere all over the screen. So let's jump into this. Winter Wolves is strikers, and that comes with a +3 nimble, and we're going to work with that in this build definitely. What's cool about these is when you dodge, you drop 3 ice mines that do 300 damage, and remember, against blaze behemoths, frost damage does even more. So that's what's really cool about these, because we're going to be dodging through attacks and dropping ice mines everywhere, not to mention dropping our frost field on the ground from Pangars Lantern. And you're going to want to put a +3 predator cell in here and a +3 nimble cell, so we can bring that nimble all the way up so we can get some great stamina regen. I like to use Titan's Crash, even though it was slightly nerfed recently and a little bit of damage, but it's still really good because it does stagger damage as well, and we want the behemoths to stay staggered in the same spot so our ice field can just keep dominating with that damage over time that it does, because we also make the ice field come back so much from Pangars Lantern because we're using Conduit for attack speed and Etheric Tument for Lantern recharge. I like to use Cyclonic Strike Plate because Tempest Form is the first mantra that you activate. It'll give you plus 15% damage at the last 10 seconds of it, and it does extend it, which is very good because that's your attack speed buff right there. Next, we're going to use Hellplate Cast, which is Helion's head piece that has a +3 Rage Hunter, and we're going to put a +3 Berserker cell in there. And then for the chest, we're using Drask's chest piece that has a +3 Etheric Tument, and we're going to put a +3 Overpower cell. And we're using Nasher's Hands that has a +3 Rage Hunter in it, and we're going to put a +3 Overpower cell in there. And then Koshai's Feet that has a +3 Predator, and we're going to put a +3 Conduit cell. And then right here what the build is all made about, because it's just so fun seeing those damage numbers everywhere all over the screen, is Pangars Shine. It restores 25% of our stamina on the insta-tap, and on the hold it does the frost pillar that's in front of you that deals 960 damage for over 12 seconds. But remember, we're going to be filling up our lantern so fast, we're going to have so many damage fields around us that 960 damage over 12 seconds multiplies, you know, depending on how many fields you have on the ground. So I've seen myself have 2, so that's a lot of damage. And then of course the behemoth moves a little bit and you end up having another one on the ground. We're going to put a +3 Conduit cell in there. And please don't forget about your tonics. It's not that expensive anymore now that they allowed you to purchase it with RAMs. I like to use Aether Drive tonics so our lantern's charging so much to where we can just keep throwing down that ice field like crazy. Because remember, that's damage all the time. Even if you're not able to hit them, that frost pillar on the ground is still hitting damage on the behemoth. And then Blitz tonic that increases our attack speed depending on our health missing. And right here, this baby's important too. This is Assault tonic, increases our stagger damage because we want to knock them down, keep them staggered, keep them in the same spot so our Frost Pillar can just dominate them. And it's really, really important. If you don't want to use Aether Drive Tonic, you can always use Frenzy Tonic to even do more damage with your Strikers. So all in all, we have a +6 Conduit that increases our attack speed by 15% for us and all Slayers. Nimble gives us 35% stamina, which is really good because you're using a lot of stamina with the Strikers, you know, especially if you're holding down the boost to run faster or whatever, or you dodge a lot. Nimble is very helpful in this situation. Overpower is the go-to, 60% damage on staggered behemoths because they will be staggered. Why? Because we're using Strikers and we're using the tonic down there, the assault tonic that increases our stagger damage, so they're definitely going to be on the ground. Predator is 35% damage if you don't get hit. Rage Hunter is 40% damage when the behemoths are raged. And Etheric Tumen is helping us keep our lantern charged so we can keep dropping that Frost Pillar on the ground so we can keep that damage over time like I was talking about. And that's a 20% lantern charge on attacks. And the Strikers do a lot of attacking, so therefore our lantern charge is pretty fast. And remember, in this build you can use any one of these weapons, the Winter Wolf weapons. I believe those are Skraev's weapons because they have the same cells. So all in all, guys, this is a really good build because it's all ice damage. It has ice on the lantern, ice weapon, and it works really good against Blaze Behemoths. You know, definitely great in the Blaze Behemoth escalation that's going on right now because there's so many of them in there. And I also have one more build that I want to show y'all, which is probably higher in damage and more protection. And it does have a little bit more health because you're not using Berserker. I didn't want to show you this one first just in case you didn't want this build or the other build, but this one right here probably has more damage because we're using Brawlers of Boreus, which has this little buff down here. After surging, you generate 2 frost sprites that grant you next attack 60% damage and minor frost damage. So just reading that right there, you can already tell that that's definitely more damage in general. But I really like the ice mines from the other weapons because it's just fun to me, you know, more things tossing around on the ground that does all these damage ticks randomly because the numbers are just flying everywhere. But generally speaking, this is probably the most DPS per second. I would believe. I didn't do the math, but you can tell just by reading this right here. Well, let's go over this build real quick. We're going to be getting the Brawlers of Boreus, and that has a +3 conditioning, and we're going to work with that in this build as well. And we're going to put a +3 overpower cell in there, and then a +3 fireproof. So like I said, this build has a little bit more protection, especially for the escalation because there's so much fire damage in there, especially those fireballs that are flying everywhere. So this will definitely help your on fire status go down a lot sooner. And like usual, I like to use Titan's Crash and Cyclonic Strike Plate. For the headpiece, that's Helion's headpiece, and it has a +3 Rage Hunter, and we're going to put a +3 Predator cell. And for the chest, that's Koshai's chest, that's Mantle of Thorns, has a +3 Predator, and we're going to put a +3 Conduit cell. Next is Nasher's Grips, that has a +3 Rage Hunter, and we're going to put a +3 Aether Hunter in there, just for a little bit more damage. And this is Dance of Swarms. We're going to work with conditioning, so that's why we're going to use this one right here, and that brings us to +6 conditioning, and we're going to put an overpower cell in there. And then the topic of all these awesome builds that we got going on is Pangars Shine, this awesome lantern, especially right now. It does crazy frost damage. We just went over it with the other build, so I don't have to keep talking about that. We have a +3 conduit cell in there. And like I said, please don't forget your tonics. You can use Frenzy Tonic like I said, or I suggest Assault Tonic, the Aether Tonic for Lantern Charge, and then Blitz Tonic for attack speed, and Assault Tonic for stagger damage. We need that stagger damage, remember, so they're laying down like I said, and we're just dominating with our Frost Pillar that's on the ground, doing that damage over time, and especially from the Strikers. So all in all, in this build, we have a +6 conditioning. This build regenerates our stamina versus just giving us a chunk of it, and that's a +3 stamina regeneration. And we have a +6 conduit for attack speed, that's 15% for us and all other Slayers. +6 overpower, 60% damage versus staggered behemoths. Like I said, they're going to be definitely laying on the ground, getting dominated by the ice pillar and your Strikers. And then Predator, that's 35% damage if you don't get hit. And then 40% damage from Rage Hunter and when they're enraged. And just to go even further in damage, I added Aether Hunter. So when they're Aether charged, you see the blue flame on their name or on their face. that's when this will initiate and do 20% extra damage. And then right here, fireproof. Like I said, these builds are great in escalation. This one will probably be a little bit more better because it doesn't have berserker, so therefore you have more health pull. And this one has fireproof, which reduces the duration of on fire status by 40%. So that's pretty significant for a lot of us here. And like I'm saying, guys, there's a lot of builds out that'll work perfect in Blaze Escalation that have nothing to do with, you know, these ice weapons and what we got going on here. But this is just fun, you know, the Frost Slayer. It's something different to use. It's very effective. I've tested it in all parts of the game. Like I said, heroic solos, heroic plus solos, always under 3 minutes. So the damage output is there. The DPS, the attack speed, the regeneration, and the synergy of your build is all there in these builds. And I really hope you're able to make these, and I really hope you have some fun with them because they are so dope. The Frost Slayer for the win, baby. Alright gamers, so the clip that you saw of me fighting in the beginning of the video was of the second build that I showed you, which is with Boreus Strikers. This one is with the first build, which is Skraev's Strikers, I believe the Winter Wolves, the one that drops the ice mines. In my opinion, this one's a little bit more funner. Of course, like I said, I didn't do the math to show which one does more damage, but I think you could tell that maybe Boreus's one does because when you surge, it gives you those damaged frost sprites. But in my opinion, it could be this one. Who knows? It depends on your situation, on how you play, on what behemoth you're fighting. But either way, they're both just as effective as you can see. I'm soloing Flameborn Nasher in the difficult Blaze Escalation, and I kick his butt in like less than 3 minutes. I know it, even though it doesn't show much of a timer. But he is so easy with this build. So like I said in my previous rant, probably, yeah, there's probably other more meta builds out there, but I tell you, this is fun, and this is new, and this is different. I hope you're able to make this build. And hey, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and on Twitter on the same handle, HndsDwnThBest Gaming. This is Hands signing out. Peace, y'all.